The smell of dust and forgotten things wasn't what bothered him. It was the silence. Arthur hadn't realized how much of his life was filled with the low, constant hum of his mother's television until the hospice nurse, a kind woman with tired eyes, had finally switched it off. Now, 3 days after the funeral, the silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was accusatory. It was the sound of everything left unsaid. He was supposed to be clearing things out, sorting the mundane artifacts of his mother, Evelyn's 80-year life, into 2 piles: keep and trash. So far, everything was in the third undecided pile that covered the living room floor. He found himself in her bedroom, a place he'd rarely entered, standing before her closet. He reached for a stack of neatly folded blankets on the top shelf, and his fingers brushed against something hard and cold. It was a small tin box, the kind that once held expensive tea. He pulled it down. It was locked with a tiny, flimsy brass padlock that looked more symbolic than functional. He'd never seen it before. Arthur sat on the edge of his mother's bed, the scent of lavender and old age clinging to the air. He was a simple man, a man of routines. He managed the accounts for a local lumberyard. He paid his bills on time. He had loved his mother, cared for her through the fog of her final years, and he had believed he knew her. This box felt like a betrayal. He went to the garage, retrieved a small screwdriver, and snapped the cheap lock in seconds. The lid creaked open. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't money. It was letters. Dozens of them, tied in faded blue ribbon. The envelopes were brittle, the stamps long obsolete. But the handwriting on the front, a looping, elegant cursive, was not his mother's. They were addressed to her. He pulled the first letter from its envelope. It wasn't a letter at all. It was a photograph. A young man, impossibly handsome in a way that seemed reserved for black and white photos, leaned against a classic car. He was laughing, looking at someone just out of frame. On the back, in his mother's familiar, tidy script, was one word: Michael. The name meant nothing. His father was Robert, a stoic man who had died of a heart attack when Arthur was 10. His mother had never remarried, never even dated. She had been, in Arthur's mind, a woman defined by her quiet widowhood. He spent the rest of the night reading. The letters were a story, a passionate, almost frantic exchange. They were from Michael. They spoke of stolen meetings, of a plan, of a someday, that felt both desperate and certain. They were filled with inside jokes, references to songs Arthur had never heard, and a startling depth of intellectual connection. This wasn't the quiet, reserved mother who baked bread and balanced checkbooks. This was a different woman, a woman who wrote about poetry and feared a cage she was trapped in. The last letter in the bundle was dated 2 weeks after his father's official date of death. My dearest Evelyn, it read, "It is done. Robert is gone. We are free. I will be at the station as promised. Be brave." Arthur felt the floor tilt. Robert is gone. We are free. It wasn't a lament. It was a celebration. He stumbled into his small home office, digging through his own desk for the worn manila folder that held his parents' documents. The death certificate. Robert Grayson. Cause of death: massive coronary infarction. Attending physician, Dr. James Allen. It was all there, neat, tidy. A lie. His entire life, his entire identity, was built on the foundation of a grieving widow and her devoted son. Now he was the son of a murderer? An accomplice? He looked at the photograph of Michael again, the laughing, handsome face. It now seemed monstrous. He spent the next week in a fog, calling in sick to the lumberyard for the first time in a decade. He became a detective in his own past. Dr. James Allen had died in the 1990s. The newspaper archives for that week in 1978 mentioned his father's death in a brief obituary, listing a sudden illness. No suspicion, no questions, it was too clean. He focused on Michael. There was no last name. He scanned the letters again, searching for a clue he'd missed. In one, Michael mentioned the view from the lighthouse, and how he missed the sound of the water at the point. Arthur knew that place. His mother had refused to ever go to the coast, always saying the salt air made her melancholy. The coast was 3 hours away. He drove. He didn't know what he was looking for. He showed the photograph to old shopkeepers and bartenders in the small coastal town near the lighthouse. They were polite, but no one recognized the man. He was about to give up when he sat in a small diner, the photo resting on the table. The waitress, a woman his mother's age with a pen tucked behind her ear, glanced at it. "My goodness," she said, her voice a gravelly rasp. You don't see many pictures of him around here. Not since the trial. Arthur's blood ran cold. You know him? Knew of him, she said, filling his coffee cup. Michael Bishop. Caused a whole world of trouble. He was from a rich family up north, came down here and fell in love with a local girl. It's the oldest story in the book. What happened to him? Arthur asked, his voice barely a whisper. He killed her husband. Or, at least that's what they said. The husband was a real piece of work, apparently. Abusive. But Michael, he had money. He had lawyers. They said the husband came at him with a tire iron. Self-defense. The town was split. Michael walked free, and the girl ... she just vanished. Left town the day of the verdict. Never seen again. He stayed, though. Lived up in that big house by the point for years, like a ghost. Drank himself to death, they say. Died about 15 years ago. Arthur drove home, the truth settling in his stomach like cold cement. His mother hadn't been a grieving widow. She had been a refugee. His father, Robert, hadn't been a quiet, stoic man. He had been a cage. He had been abusive. The man in the photograph, Michael, wasn't a murderer. He was a savior, and his mother. His mother had run, but why? The letter said, "We are free." Why hadn't she gone to the station? He got home and went straight to the tin box. He had missed something. Tucked beneath the blue ribbon, stuck to the bottom of the tin, was one more envelope. It was different. It was his mother's handwriting, addressed to Michael. But it was unsealed, unstamped. It was a letter she never sent. He unfolded the brittle paper. "My dearest Michael, I cannot come. I saw you at the station, and I wanted to run to you. But I cannot. I am not brave. He is gone and I am free, but I am carrying Robert's child. I saw the doctor this morning. I cannot bring a child into this, into the scandal, into the shadow of what we had to do. You are free. Go and live. Do not look for me. I will tell the child his father was a good man. I will build him a life on a kind lie, and it will be the only truth he ever needs. Forgive me. I will love you until I die. Evelyn." Arthur sat in the accusatory silence of the house, the letter trembling in his hand. He was the kind lie. His entire life, his simple, routine, stable life at the lumberyard, was the promise she had kept. She hadn't chosen Michael, the passionate love, because she had chosen him. She had protected him, not from the truth of his father's violence, but from the truth of her own. She had built a wall of mundane life around him, brick by quiet brick, until he was safe. He picked up the photograph of Michael, the laughing man, and for the first time he felt a profound, aching gratitude. He put the letters, all of them, back into the tin. He closed the lid. He did not need to sort this. He knew exactly which pile it belonged to. He took the box to his own room and placed it not in the trash but on his own shelf, where it belonged. The silence in the house no longer felt empty. It felt full. It was the sound of a story, finally completely understood.